Welcome back. You're still watching the Nile article, and to be shedding more light on the importance and the development of bilateral ties between Egypt and the rest of the Mediterranean countries, more specifically with Turkey, Greece and Cyprus under the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in various domains, more specifically diplomacy, energy and the economy. I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Asmaa Zeiny, the researcher in the international relations and the senior fellow at the Global Peace Institute. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Doctor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. But first of all, we'll be starting with a report about this important topic, focusing on Egypt expanding the strategic developmental bilateral ties with the rest of the Mediterranean countries as the Mediterranean is in motion.
Egypt's Mediterranean diplomacy is entering a particularly dynamic phase, with Cairo engaging simultaneously with several key regional partners while navigating a rapidly changing security environment. A significant recent development came on August 15th when Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and his Turkish counterpart chaired the second meeting of the Egyptian-Turkish Joint Planning Group in New Alamein city. The meeting followed the second session of the Egyptian-Turkish High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council, chaired by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Cairo in February 2026. The discussions reflected the continuing expansion of bilateral coordination across political and economic files. Egypt and Turkey are both influential regional actors, and their growing consultations come as complex and strategic tensions extend from Gaza and Libya to the wider Eastern Mediterranean. Greater communication between Cairo and Ankara therefore has implications beyond bilateral relations, particularly when regional stability requires channels capable of bringing different perspectives into the same diplomatic conversation. Egypt's relationship with Cyprus is developing along another important track. On August 14th, Minister Abdulati spoke by phone with Cypriot Foreign Minister about advancing bilateral relations within the framework of the close partnership and continuing coordination between the two countries. The call also came against a broader backdrop of regional developments. The relationship with Greece is equally active. On August 22nd, Minister Abdulati held a telephone conversation with Greek Foreign Minister focusing on bilateral relations and regional developments within the framework of the country's strategic partnership and sustained coordination. On August 25th, Shell approved a $350 million final investment decision for Phase 12A of the West Delta Deep Marine Concession in the Mediterranean, involving 3 deep-water gas wells expected to begin production in 2028. The project is being implemented, demonstrating the continuing importance of Egypt's offshore Mediterranean resources to its energy position. Egypt is engaging with Turkey, Greece and Cyprus through different diplomatic channels while maintaining its own strategic priorities. The result is a Mediterranean policy in which geography is being accompanied by active diplomacy, giving Cairo greater capacity to participate in discussions over security, energy and regional stability.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Nile article. Dr. Asmaa Zeiny, as we did see for the past report and for the main topic for tonight, the engagement in terms of the diplomatic consultations between Egypt and Turkey, as well as Cyprus and Greece. How do you see the diplomatic influence being increased through those consultations and deliberations and the developments under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the past decade or more?
The real thing that could be taken out of this situation, that Egypt is maintaining balance in its relations with all regional powers. It is never like Cyprus and Greece or Turkey. Egypt is moving practically to the stage of Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey.
Yes.
Egypt even is moving its relationship from like normalizing the relation with Turkey into making it institutionalized. The meaning of changing the type of relation into institutionalized, that it is going to be permanent and remaining, whatever, whenever any officially changes. This is the most important when we have this type of relations, that we are telling our partners that we need this type of relation to be continuous and effective at the same time.
Doctor, you mentioned the importance of balance, and this is the theme of the Egyptian diplomacy and the Egyptian agenda under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdel Ati. How important is this balance for the rest of the Mediterranean countries, especially that Egypt is always keeping the national interests at heart as well at the same time?
Actually, what it changes the interest of Egyptian diplomacy under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, what it changes the interest of this diplomacy is the regionally changes what's happening around us. First of all, in Gaza and other regions, Egypt needs to balance this, serving its own national first and ending with its national security and national interests, of course. What I have seen during the last time of the from Minister Badr Abdel Ati, he's having too much calls, too much meetings, making these relations something tangible, something it's not like having a phone call every now and then or a ministerial meeting every now and then. Actually, he received Turkish officials at Al Alamein, and they had that meeting, very important meeting.
Yes, there was a meeting for the Egyptian-Turkish Joint Committee that took place on August the 15th in the Alamein city. How do you see such a development and the boosting of the bilateral ties between both countries on this level?
It was not a ministerial meeting, it was a committee, and this is what's important about that type of meetings, that we are changing the bilateral relations into like wider type of relation to discover what are the opportunities for future collaboration. What's important that we must be able to change this negotiations and meetings and committee meetings into practical something tangible, like actual projects, and I believe that Egypt is able to reach this stage very soon.
Does this mean that we have evolved in terms of the Egyptian foreign relations?
Somehow, yes, and this is normal with the changing happening all around us. Look at our borders from everywhere, upside, right, but whatever. We are affected about what's happening around us, and Egypt is balancing this so quickly.
Yes, and Doctor, also you mentioned the regional developments that took place not just for the past year, but for the past year we have seen at least the war between the United States, Israel and Iran for the past 6 months, to say the least. Before that, the Israeli aggression against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the COVID-19 pandemic in the past 6 years. Between them, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. How did you see the response of the Egyptian leadership towards all those crises?
Yeah, yes. I believe Egyptian diplomacy regarding whatever happening in the world is so flexible, and this is what leads to this quick change in relationship. Still, in diplomacy, we still can disagree. I can disagree with one country in something that be between Egypt and Turkey about Libya, for example. But still, we can have communications and agreements about other issues which we agree on. This is the flexible part in the Egyptian diplomacy. Most important that Egypt remains amid all these global and regional changes, the partner, the one power the whole world is willing to communicate with, being the European Union, Turkey, and still it is able to mediate. We still disagree with some neighbors or other partners, but still we are able to mediate in some conflicts with these disagreements.
Yes, on the diplomatic and the economic levels, we have maintained a durable engagement between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece, especially for the past decade. How would you comment on such an achievement that we haven't seen really in the past decades?
this is a so smart step taken by Egyptian politics and diplomacy, because we with Greece and Cyprus especially have a very special source of power, which is energy. And according to the global changes and conflicts that happening all around us, the source of energy became like the most important in our times, especially
Yes.
after the war between Israel, US, and Iran. I believe that starting early enough, the relationships and arrangements between Egypt, Cyprus, and the Greece regarding the energy and things related to it was like a gift for Egypt before the global crisis of energy.
Speaking of energy and the investments, Shell, for example, it has decided to be investing about $350 million in the Mediterranean and, of course, in Egypt. How do you see the diplomatic approach that we have witnessed under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi resulting in the attraction of foreign direct investments, as we did see those $350 million? That's a big decision.
Yeah, this huge number is an answer, is a message to the whole world that Shell is trusting the atmosphere in Egypt, the stability amid what is happening. We are, we are in amid a very hot conflicts all around.
Yes.
But still they trust the stability, the investment atmosphere here in Egypt. That's why they bought this huge amount of money to invest here.
Yes, the conflicts around us, especially for the past 6 months to say the least, it has affected, the conflict has affected the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, for example, the brothers in Iraq and Jordan. Do you think that this will be benefiting us on the economic level, that investments could be heading toward Egypt?
It is expected somehow to little bit benefit, but this is not a target that we should be only expecting.
Yes.
If it is going to happen, we need to invest this, how to be ready, because it's a huge amount of investments. If they're going to change direction, it's a huge amount and needs a lot of preparations and arrangements. And I believe the Egyptian diplomacy is aware of this and is taking the gradual steps towards strengthening the relationships with other partners like Turkey, because this same reasons as the staff mentioned.
Are we ready, in your opinion, in terms of
believe yes.
infrastructure, the economy, growing investments?
Believe me, investors are smart enough. They never direct their attention toward this a place, a state, whatever point. If it doesn't trust that the money will be safe and they are ready enough to receive. This comes from them first, and be assured by Egypt in this regard. We assured them in shape of having these agreements and meetings and preparations.
Yes, Dr. Asmaa, you've mentioned the recent conflicts that have taken place for the past 5 or 6 years. One of them is the Gaza crisis and the aggression that we have seen ever since 2023 by the Israeli occupation forces against the innocent Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. How do you see the role of Egypt in terms of mediation and reaching the ceasefire, first of all, implementing the first part of the US President Donald Trump's plan, and hopefully implementing the second phase of this plan through the partnerships of the Mediterranean, because you also mentioned the role of Turkey, for example, in those mediation efforts?
I believe the main result that Egypt reached this position after having its own peace agreement between Egypt and Israel years ago, after the ending of war between Egypt and Israel. Egypt was wise enough to see far that we need stability, we need to stop this war. That's why the main reason pushing Egypt towards having these agreements and mediations between whatever conflicting parts. Egypt is positioned in a place which gives her the real opportunity to talk to everyone. We are able, amid our conflicts, amid this so hot conflicts,
Yes.
to have communication with every party. I believe whenever the European Union is in need to someone to communicate with about Gaza or whatever happening around us, it's usually Egypt. Turkey is having communication, even Pakistan in the negotiating and mediating between US and Iran during the last conflict. I believe Egypt is a main player in the idea of mediation and peace deals.
Yes, and speaking of mediation and consultations, we have seen for the past week President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi receiving Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar, the commander of the Libyan National Army. How do you see the updates and the developments in Libya affecting the Mediterranean partnerships, especially in terms of the illegal migration?
Egypt is affirming every now and then that the security, the Mediterranean policy, Egyptian policy, is related completely to our national security. As you just have mentioned, that what matters for European Union was the issue of migration and maybe power, energy, but for Egypt, its security is number one priority. This is clear in the meetings between Egypt and Khalifa Haftar here, that we are caring first of all about our national security, and also about the interests of Libyan people, because it matters to us as a neighbor, as an Arab country, as a Muslim country, and for other issues, but mainly the security issue.
Yes, for Egypt to be keeping security and stability in the region, to be keeping the peace, to be controlling the illegal migration from Egypt and for the rest of the Arab world as well. How do you think this has affected positively the relationship between Egypt and the rest of the European Union countries?
I believe this is one of the main reasons of building this trust, that Egypt is not taking the issue easily. Let people go wherever they need to go, whatever they need to do, because the main priority for the European Union is keeping their borders. This is a main issue for them, and Egypt is giving its own their right. We can still exchange people; they can go freely according to regulations and in normal ways, but keeping it under control is the thing that give European Union trust in the Egyptian policy towards the issue of migration.
Yes.
And this is main reason of Egypt keeping the security of the Mediterranean for this reason also.
What is the importance of sustaining dialogue for the Egyptian diplomacy agenda in general? Because you've mentioned that Egypt has been a key player, the mediator in a number of conflicts in the region and globally as well, even during the war between the United States and Iran.
One reason is the success of Egyptian to sustain peace with the main with Israel for years. Everyone was expecting that this peace deal is going to be like very fragile and very few days and we will give up, but Egypt maintained this and doing her duties, even if the Israeli part was not keeping his part in this. This what gave the whole world a practical example that Egypt is able to repeat this issue of having peace deals and sustainable agreements. I believe this is one reason, and of course the balanced Egyptian diplomacy between East and West and all neighbors and regional powers.
Yes, Doctor, allow me to be going to the other report of the Nile article for tonight, from the dialogue to the strategic influence, and how Egypt is shaping the foreign policy agenda once again through the Mediterranean partnerships.
The significance of Egypt's Mediterranean engagement extends beyond individual meetings and bilateral contacts. Egypt's broader pattern of diplomatic interaction is significant in the sense that Cairo maintains relationships with countries whose interests do not always coincide with continuing to pursue its own national and regional priorities. The August 15th meeting of the Joint Planning Group was not an isolated diplomatic encounter. It followed the February 2026 High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council chaired by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and reflected efforts to institutionalize consultations between the two countries. At the same time, Egypt continues to deepen established cooperation with Cyprus and Greece. The August 14th conversation between between Minister Abdel and Cyprus Foreign Minister focused on advancing bilateral relations, while the August 22nd conversation with Greece Foreign Minister addressed bilateral cooperation and regional developments. These parallel channels give Egypt room to maintain communication with different centers of influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. This becomes particularly relevant as the region faces questions over maritime security, energy infrastructure and connectivity. Egypt's Mediterranean gas sector remains attractive to international investors. Shell's latest $350 million decision, along with the participation of Egypt's entities, illustrates how existing offshore infrastructure can support additional production while reinforcing Egypt's position within regional energy markets. Cairo is not approaching the Mediterranean exclusively through a security lens, nor solely through an energy lens. Diplomacy, economic interests, maritime considerations, and regional stability increasingly interact. Egypt's established relationships with Greece and Cyprus, its expanding dialogue with Turkey, and its wider regional diplomatic activity give it multiple channels through which to pursue stability and cooperation. In this regard, the Mediterranean is consequently becoming an increasingly important dimension of Egypt's external engagement. Egypt's ability to maintain dialogue with diverse regional partners strengthens its capacity to remain an influential participant in shaping the region's future.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Nile article, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Asmaa Zeiny, the International Relations Researcher and the Senior Fellow at the Global Peace Institute. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
We were speaking about the Mediterranean and the bilateral relations between Egypt and the rest of the countries located at such a central arena. In your opinion, why has it become a more central arena for the foreign policy of Egypt for the past decade? What has changed?
The main reason is the conflicts happening every now and then in the region and in the globe. I believe Russia and Ukraine war was one reason,
yes.
And also the war between Israel, US and Iran is a huge reason, and of course what happened in Gaza, Palestine is one huge issue for turning the attention of Egypt not only to the Arab world, the Middle East, or even to African power. It's paying attention to the importance of Mediterranean diplomacy.
On the other hand, how do you see the growing relations between Egypt and Turkey, and at the same time, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, that there is the balance between Egypt and Cyprus, Egypt and Greece, and at the same time the balance between Egypt?
I believe step is became very necessary now after the breakout of the war between Israel and US, Israel and Iran. This became necessary. We need that balance in the region. Egypt needs this balance in the region. We need to keep the stage of being able to talk to everyone, because if this ability, I believe each conflict is going to be much harmer to everyone. Egypt is wise enough to have this balance, because what's happening, these conflicts, these are not chosen, these are things imposed on us during the last few months.
Dr. Asmaa, do you think that the Eastern Mediterranean countries are choosing now to be having more dialogue with the Arab countries, to be having bigger partnerships according to the understandings and the developments in the region nowadays?
Even if they are not choosing, they are going to do it. It's a need. It became like a need. It became like imposed because of what is happening around everyone. The European Union is in a very bad need to keep communications, to feel that someone can control the situation. And I believe Egypt, as a power in the region, is the ideal power to make European Union comfortable about this issue.
Is it just a political need? Could it be an economic need for the future?
For us,
the
it is
energy needs as well?
For us, it is economic and industrial and different types. For them, for now, the main need is the energy issue, I believe.
And how can we enhance the Egyptian relation with the European Union through the Mediterranean countries?
I believe the last like 2 years especially witnessed a tangible improvement in the Egyptian-European relationship. This was created by the visit that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi paid to the European Union headquarters and how he was received inside the headquarters, and the other visits and calls and communications that became more than regular between Dr. Badr Abdelati, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the guests that we receive every now and then from European Union. I believe they are also telling the whole world that this is a sign of trust and of tangibility of the change.
On the other hand, how do you think the energy connectivity through the Mediterranean countries from Egypt to the rest of the world, and more specifically for the Mediterranean countries, could be impacting the political influence of Egypt in the area, in the region?
A huge impact. Usually the energy issue in our decade, in the last decade, became like a matter of death and life. It is so important for all countries. No one can deny this. It is so crucial for us here in Egypt and European Union and everyone, especially with the stopping of free moving in some water passes like Strait of Hormuz. Everyone is going to secure his needs of energy somehow. I believe this is a main reason of making the issue of energy. It is important originally, but became more important with this blockade of passing in the some waterways.
Yes, one main theme of the trilateral relationship between Egypt, Greece and Cyprus is the respect for the international law and for the peaceful solutions for the maritime disputes, as we did see the demarcation lines between the three countries for the energy resources. How do you see the importance of highlighting such a theme when it comes to be dealing with the energy connectivity and the importance of demarcating the lines between the three countries?
I believe Egypt took enough time to reach the demarcation and agreements between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece, and this was a plus for Egypt. When it came to the relation between Egypt and Turkey, Egypt is giving a very clear message. It is not this or that. It is this and that. And also it is, we still can disagree. Egypt is not agreeing in the whole line with all issues with Turkey, but still we can have communications and turning the political issue into economic cooperation somehow according to the interests and needs of both parts. And I believe this is going very soon to be moved into something practical, I believe.
Do you think that this theme and highlighting such a theme will be ending the competition, the idea of competing neighbors on energy?
Usually competition is never ended. It is calmed. Sometimes you cover the face, but it's going to remain. Maybe it changes its face, but it is going to remain, or take a different shape. Let's this competing take the shape of projects and who is going to have a huge more than the other. Let's think about this. Think in this way.
But at least we have evaded the wider regional confrontation.
It's going not to lead, I believe, it's not going to lead to any future confrontation, at least between Egypt and all regional power, I believe.
On the other hand, as you mentioned that there are changes, there are updates for the past 5 or 6 years globally and in the region, in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East. But still, we have this trilateral mechanism between Egypt, Greece and Cyprus. How would you comment on the resilience of this relationship?
I believe this is a success, clear success, that usually Egypt is never doing aggression to whatever country. It is never in our blood. It is not in the Egyptian blood to have aggression against neighbors or partners or whatsoever. I believe this main reason, which gives this trust to other regional powers that Egypt wishes to have these communications and relations because they are sure Egypt, one main theme of Egyptian diplomacy is keeping integrity and sovereignty of all our neighbors. I believe this is another very important reason to maintain this balanced relation between Egypt, Turkey, Cyprus, and Greece, and even other neighbors.
Yes, and speaking of other neighbors, Egypt has good bilateral relations with the Arab partners, with the neighbors, with the Africans, with the Europeans, with the Mediterranean countries. How do you see the evolving foreign diplomacy under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the past decade or more?
I believe this is a clear success of the Egyptian diplomacy under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, at least to maintain, to regain, let's say not maintain, to regain relations with some African powers, which we for at some time lost this communications, and this leads to great problems between Egypt and some African countries. Egypt had regained this balance with some African countries, and I believe also the success in the Middle East and between Turkey and Greece is another mark of success, and this indication that Egypt is qualified to take the position that Egypt receives in the last like 10 years,
yes.
I believe.
But what about the next 10 years? How do you see the role of Egypt, especially after having all those developments in the bilateral ties?
Egypt deserves the better always, but this is not enough that we deserve. We need to change our hopes and our wishes in the future to something practical. We need to work to change our hopes into something done. Like the agreements, the meetings, and also to change these meetings into practical projects, economic and industrial, that service our own national interests in the first place.
Yes, Dr. Asmaa Zeiny, the International Relations Researcher and the Senior Fellow at the Global Peace Institute. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Nile article.
It's an honor. Thank you so much.
The honor is all mine. And we'll be having a quick break, so stay tuned.